Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 4 of the Game In podcast. Super excited to be back. It's been an interesting couple weeks in gaming for myself, and I know for Jim. We've been playing some of the same games together that have ended up being surprisingly topical with a lot of discussion of some things that have happened online. We want to talk about the Stop Killing Games movement today, and we want to talk about live service games, kind of our opinions on them, our experience with them. And we want to talk about some of the stuff that's been going on with Xbox recently. Unfortunately, there was some more layoffs and there was some more discussion on like studios getting their funding pulled and things like that. And a lot of it has kind of tied together in a certain way as we've talked about it offline. And we wanted to share our thoughts today about those things.
Yeah. And more importantly, there's a lot of things that have happened in terms of just like what is going to happen to Xbox, what is going to happen to all these live service games. So it's going to be interesting. But I want to start off here. How have you been doing, man? It's been 2 weeks.
Man, you know what I like about you, Jim, is you always ask me how I'm doing, you know, and very few people in my life actually want to know how I'm doing. That's not true. A lot of people do. Got a lot of friends. I've got good people in my life. But I'm good. Recently I started Expedition 33. We had talked about that in the past. I'm really enjoying the game. I'm seeing why a lot of people love it as much as they do. I think it does everything really well. Like, I think everything that it's trying to do so far, I'm in Act 2. It's done really well. The word I've been using to describe it is nostalgia bait. Like, they very clearly wear their inspirations on their sleeve, and I'm not saying that in a bad way or a negative way, but like you can tell what games inspired this game, and it's all like it's a cocktail of a lot of games that I love, that I grew up with. It's got like one of my favorite series, Final Fantasy, Nier, are very much so embedded in there. But like it has like its fresh twists and its fresh takes. I really love the way it treats its characters, and the way like they do dialogue in the game feels really nice. Feels pretty reminiscent of Final Fantasy X is actually what I would say. But yeah, I've enjoyed it. I'm gonna do more of it this week. I'm probably gonna have 3 or 4 streams of it this week. It's weird. It's a game that I'm motivated to do all the side content on, which it's been a while since I've had a game like that. Other than a game that I just finished getting all the side stuff on, and that was Liza P. I spent a lot of time with the Liza P DLC in the last couple weeks. I finished a 4th playthrough of the game to make sure I got the platinum on it and that I had every record. And it's been a really solid week of gaming, but also I've gotten to spend a lot of time with my family the last couple weeks, talking about games with them, but also just talking about life and stuff. I helped my sister-in-law build an Olympic trampoline this past
An Olympic
weekend.
Trampoline.
Yeah, she owns
Wow.
a tumbling and tramp gym. So it was kind of this fun thing. I hadn't been there in a couple years, and it was fun to see how it's evolved since we built the first trampoline. This was the 3rd one that was getting put into the space that we were building, and it was kind of a fun thing. But yeah, that's been my last couple weeks. Games and family. What have you been up to?
Yeah. So in terms of what we've been playing, I've been trying to get all my, because I haven't logged into Final Fantasy 14 in a while, I've been trying to gear up because I think what day is the live letter? I think it's next week. So we're recording this on the 14th. And the live letter is next Friday on the 25th. And so that
I gotta
means the
log on
patch will
and
be
gear
out.
up.
So that means the patch will probably be the 1st or 2nd week of August, roughly.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm trying to gear up as much as possible. Trying to been doing that. I finished Final Fantasy 9.
Oh, you finished Final Fantasy 9. That's
Yes,
one
I
of my
did.
top 3 Final Fantasies. What'd you think?
Honestly, okay, so let me preface this. And I do love this game, right? A lot of people that I've seen have this this kind of idea. Maybe it's just the mature aspects of how Final Fantasy has come to be, right?
Yeah.
With 7, 8, 10, and onwards, right? I'm not really counting the pixel games, but here in the 3D Final Fantasies, it is very different, right?
Yeah.
Very visually different. When I first played it, it reminded me of playing like a Ghibli movie, if that made sense,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. The
I thought it was really
whimsicalness
cool,
of it.
the whimsicalness of it, and I be honest, it's probably my favorite Final Fantasy that I've
So
ever played.
I'll tell you why I love 9. For me, character-driven stories are what I love. Um, and certainly Final Fantasy has character-driven stories in it, but I feel like in a lot of Final Fantasies, one or two characters really drive the narrative and have development. If we take FF7, for example, Cloud has significantly more character development than every other character in that game. Not that they don't have it, but like it is clearly a Cloud-led game. The same for 8. Squall and Renoa really carry that game. In 9, every single character has an arc and development that they go through. Steiner is not the same character he was at the beginning of that game, very clearly. Vivi,
Right.
Garnet, Zidane is probably one of the more flat characters, honestly, and I still feel like he has a lot of fun development. So 9 does that really well. And the only game that I think does it better is 13, which is why I love 13 as much as I do. But 13 sacrifices a lot of the classic like world building aspects of a Final Fantasy, the towns, the NPCs, the personality of like that world. 9 doesn't sacrifice any of that. 9 is like this beautiful fusion of character stories and world building that I truly feel no other Final Fantasy pulls off, except maybe 14, but 14's had like 6 expansions to do it.
They've had 10 years to do it, right? Yeah, exactly.
So 9, I think 9 is truly a special game, not just like within Final Fantasy, I think within like JRPGs. I think it does a lot of things successfully that no other JRPG does in quite the same way. And yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful from start to finish.
You know what? Hold on. Now that you say that, hold on. Right here, I'm going to show up something really, really cool. And I've showed this off to you. In my hands, I have $200 right here.
Oh, man.
I have $200. And this is the Vivi card if people are just listening to the audio part of this. Right here is the Vivi Magic Gap. This isn't like the borderless art. You know what I'm talking about, right? The full on art of Vivi. That is like 1,000. Also got that's like $50-ish or something like that.
So I actually got some new Magic cards today as well. So last time I had the Final Fantasy 13 crew behind me, I ordered the borderless version of all the not lightning ones because lightning was already borderless. I got them for like $5 on TCG Player for all 5 of them, or all 6 of them. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. And they came today. Before this podcast, I was actually getting them mounted. So I'll show Sarah because Sarah's the easiest to see it with. So if you look at this Sarah card, the borderless goes all the way out to the edge.
That's really cool. That's awesome.
And then I have both versions of the card in this case. So this is how the original looked. You can see there's like an actual square around the art because she's double-sided. But if I were to pull the borderless out, the back of the borderless one is also borderless. But yeah, so I got that for the whole crew. And like I said, it wasn't. I'm gonna have to stand up to put this back on its stand. Gosh dang it!
Yeah,
Gosh
see,
dang it. I was thinking I was slick.
I I just ruined all of the framing, by the way, for this podcast already within the span of like 5 minutes. We had it perfectly framed up. Now we're just like all constantly moving, and now the frames are all messed up.
But yeah, the Magic Final Fantasy cards have been surprisingly fun. And that
They
baby
have been
card's awesome.
It is
If it
I
wasn't
heard it's really,
$200,
really good.
I'd buy one.
Yeah, no, but I heard I was listening. It was a YouTube short or a short form content wherever TikTok, Instagram, wherever I found this on. They were talking about how weird this pack is for Magic the Gathering people are, right, when they're buying packs and everything, because prices have not gone down yet,
Yeah.
right? So it's like a mix of things. It's like Final Fantasy, and it's the people. I I think it's the people that have caught on to this, that are Pokemon people and they collect Pokemon cards, right? And they've caught
Oh,
on. It's like, oh, there's a market here, right? So a
yeah.
lot of the people from Magic the Gathering, I think there has been a little bit of this, but not to the extent that Pokemon has, right? But I think they're very scared of this becoming a constant trend, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, so they're called like other worlds or something in Magic. I don't play Magic, so I don't fully
Yeah, neither do
understand.
I.
But in
Mhm.
talking to guys at the shops that I bought the cards from, they had mentioned to me that like this is not the first set like this. There was a Lord of the Rings set, there was a Doctor Who set, and those kind of things. But with those sets, it was still just like Magic fans getting the sets.
Right.
You
Mhm.
didn't have like Doctor Who fans showing up and being like, "Oh, I'm going to collect the whole Doctor Who set." You didn't have Lord of the Rings fans, maybe a few, but not a ton. It was Magic fans. And Final Fantasy fans are used to getting merch of this series. So for
Right.
us, it
Mhm.
was like, oh, I don't care that I don't play Magic. I want these cards. I want the art. I want what's on them. Like me, I got the 7 cards of my favorite game
Right.
just to display. Uh, and I don't think the Magic community has experienced that yet. And some of the future sets that are coming out are like, I think there's a Marvel set coming and stuff
Right.
like that. And there was also already controversy of like if Magic fans wanted these things um, at all, and now it's like, oh well, like now I have to compete for with fans of these franchises, like, and like comic book collectors are
Are there a different beast?
they're a different beast. So I imagine that Marvel set is going to be it's going to be a weird thing for that community.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, every community has things that happen within their communities that bug them. One of which we're going to talk about today with the gaming community, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when your favorite game gets shut down. That's when your favorite game gets shut down. And this happens in multiple forms. This can be a gacha game getting shut down, like a full-blown live service. This could be an MMO having its servers shut down. This could be like a game like Halo 3 that had a single player, had local co-op, but it was a big deal when the online server shut down. Like you can find videos of people
Mm-hmm.
basically in voice chat with their friends being like, servers are going down any minute. I don't know what's going to happen. And you just hear the voice cut out. And
Mm-hmm.
it's all like, oh man, they were online playing together the moment it happened. Like, what a drag. Um, and something that's been in the news a lot in the last couple weeks about this is the Stop Killing Games movement. Now, there's been good, there's been bad, there's been a lot of stuff around this. We're not here to talk about any kind of drama or any of the people necessarily involved in any of this, but we do want to talk about the movement itself, kind of our opinions on the idea, and our experience with the kind of games this would affect. But you have the information on what the Stop Killing Games movement is, right?
Right. So just to quote it, right, this is taken from the website. This is like the first paragraph. Stop killing games, for the people that aren't aware or, just kind of need a refresher. Stop Killing Games as a consumer movement started to challenge the legality of publishers destroying video games they have sold to customers. An increasing number of video games are sold effectively as goods with no stated expiration date, but designed to be completely unplayable as soon as support from the publisher ends. This practice is a form of planned obsolescence and is not only detrimental to customers, but makes preservation effectively impossible. Furthermore, the legality of this practice is largely untested in many countries. And this has started as a European Union gaming lobby kind of movement first, and then it kind of took off from there. That's kind of the understanding that I've taken from this.
Yeah. Well, and not the gaming lobbies have pushed for this, but there's a group pushing against the gaming lobbies to get this happen, and the gaming lobbies have actually responded.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I've got an article here from DSO Gaming. So the Stop Killing Games movement did hit the 1 million required signatures on, I think it was like July 4th, July 5th, that they needed to basically get the EU to look at it and talk about it. That's not saying that like a law has been passed. That's not saying that like a law has even been drafted. This is like the 1 million signatures for the European Union to look at this topic and say, oh, people care about this. And as soon as that happened, their Video Games Europe, it's a group that speaks for the video game industry in Europe. This is a group of lobbyists that is paid by like EA, Ubisoft, Nintendo, Microsoft, Riot. These are people who go to government meetings and tell them like what regulations they should be passing, stuff like that. And this was their response. We appreciate the passion of our community. However, the decision to discontinue online services is multifaceted, never taken lightly, and must be an option for companies when an online experience is no longer commercially viable. We understand that it can be disappointing for players, but when it does happen, the industry ensures that players are given fair notice of the prospective changes in compliance with local consumer protection laws. Private servers are not always a viable alternative option for players, as the protections we put in place to secure players' data, remove illegal content, and combat unsafe community content would not exist and would leave rights holders liable. In addition, many titles are designed from the ground up to be online only. In effect, these proposals would curtail developer choice by making those video games prohibitively expensive to create. So there's a couple things there. One, it's kind of a lame answer, in my opinion, of, look, this costs a lot of money, we don't want to do it.
Right.
But there are things in there that I do think are interesting questions. They talk about like combating unsafe community content. Like Final Fantasy 14, for example, has been very open about they don't allow mods because there's legal gray waters with it that they don't want to be involved in. And it's like, cool, well, if they shut down official servers and a fan server goes up, are the fans who are running that server legally responsible? Or is Square Enix still legally responsible because they're letting it happen? And I think there's a lot of like pushback in like that capacity of stuff like that, where it's all like, oh, well, securing players' data, removing illegal content, combating unsafe community content. Like on the surface that it's all like, no, like that's, the video game companies are not wrong when they say like those are issues. And what I think the Stop Killing Games movement is about is saying, cool, well, let's have a discussion about how to solve for that, because we don't want you to keep killing games. They're not saying just ignore that and just straight up give us private servers and like take all the responsibility. I think they're saying, hey, if there's issues, let's figure it out. Let's sit down, let's have a discussion. And I can understand like why we'd want to keep these games alive. You and I both have tons of experience with live service games. And I mean, we're currently playing some.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I both know we could show the conversation back and forth of the last week. We're not going to show it, but we've both been deep in Uma Musume.
Hmm.
Tell me what got you hooked. I can tell you my story, but I want to know. I want to know where it started for you. What made you download it?
So I saw a bunch of people. Well, I kind of figured, it came out around the same time that the Persona 5 mobile game came out, right? And globally, right? I think it was the same day if I remember
Yeah,
correctly. And um I didn't pay too much mind for it because I was like, oh, I'm gonna try the Persona 5 mobile game. I have it installed on my phone. I haven't tried it yet. But I'll, weeks pass by, and I look at Steam and I see Uma Musume, and I know of this series. I haven't watched the anime until just recently, but I knew of it in passing, kind of sort of. Um, and I was like passing through, and I was like, huh, it seems like this game is getting pretty popular, right? And I see more videos on it, and scrolling through social media, I'm seeing like all these reactions of like people actually um like the horse racing, right? And we both been to Vegas, right?
yeah.
We both been to Vegas
We
before
roomed
with each
together
other.
in Vegas.
We roomed together in Vegas. And what was the first thing? Well, do you remember the first thing I wanted to do in Vegas, gambling wise? Do
You
you remember
wanted to
what
go
that
to
was?
horses, wasn't it?
Yeah, it
You
was
wanted to go to the
it,
tracks, yeah.
it was horses. It wasn't like the tracks, but it was the mechanical horses that go around in I think it was the Bellagio, right, where we ended up
That's
finding
right.
one. I think.
You were telling me about it, and I was like, "There's no way that's a thing." And you're like, "No, dude, you got to see it."
Let me tell you, I wasted so much money. I think you actually might have came away with money
I didn't do
during.
any gambling that weekend.
Oh,
I
you were watching. You were
Yeah,
watching.
no,
Yeah.
I was the voice of reason that was all like, "Dude, I am not financially prepared to lose $500 this weekend." I think I may have like
Okay.
played one hand of blackjack and lost $20. Like,
Right. To be fair. Okay, I'm not gonna make this any better for me. I lost $200 in that game, so I can't really speak for that. But um, seeing that, I was like, you know what? I like the concept of horse racing. I'll give it a shot. And it became so much more than that, right? If that makes sense.
yeah,
Um, I think someone described it really well. It's kind of like a roguelite, if that makes sense.
yes. Yeah, the
So
gameplay of it is surprisingly well thought out, and well put together. And it's like you could get a horse and like train him the exact same way twice and not get the same results.
yeah,
Because of the way that the game's set up. And it's every time you race, you can be like, oh, my stats are way higher than everyone else. Like easy first, and then you come in 12th, and you're like, what happened? What
it,
happened? Like,
and, and then you do the alarm clock 3 times, and you still end up with worse results every single
yep.
time, and you're like, I shouldn't have wasted those 3 alarm clocks. And it is,
I've wasted many
but no,
alarm clocks.
it is surprisingly very very good, and I it was surprisingly so good that as a I've kind of swore off spending money, like too much money on gotcha games, right? But for
Yeah,
this one, for one, I really like the developer. Side Games is fantastic. Let me tell you that.
yeah,
As a mobile developer, um, but two, it's just like I feel like for this game in particular, you can have so much fun just going purely free to play, in my opinion. But I did spend money, so I can't really speak on that.
yeah,
But just from what I played, you could just because it this one is different, right? Where I have this obsession of getting um a lot of the good tier characters on like a tier list, or like a meta tier list or whatnot.
yeah.
And there is meta tier lists for Musume, don't get me wrong, but this is one of those games where it's like I don't really care. I'm just gonna go in with a random horse, and I'm just gonna see what happens, right?
So I'll tell you how I got started to Uma Musume. A few years back, there were a lot of comparisons of the animation of season 2 of Blue Lock, the soccer anime, and
Right.
Uma Musume, because the anime has really good animation, because Psy Games made the game did really well, and then they made the anime with all the money they were making to basically advertise the game. And for people who don't know what this game is, it's basically it's a game where you race horse girls that they're reincarnated versions of horses from our world. Like that is the plot. And in this world, they participate in all these Japanese races, but where they're reincarnations of actual horses, Cygames has gone to the owners of these horses and gotten permission to use their names and their personalities and their history of like the races they were in. So like when you play through the career of a horse in the game, you're playing through the actual races that they participated in. And when they made the anime, they picked certain horses and basically made whole seasons about their careers. And it's kind of like, it looks silly, but then you realize like it's this really inspirational sports anime about like these, like if you like the movie Seabiscuit or Secretariat, like it's literally just an anime version of that, like these super inspirational racing horses. And like I sat down to watch the first episode of the anime to be like, is the animation really that good? And I was like, oh man, well now I'm invested in this story. And I watched all 3 seasons a couple years ago, and this was just when the game was out in JP. So when the game announced like global, I was all like, oh, I can finally like play the game. And I see why it generated enough money to make one of the most well animated shows ever made, because it's fun, it's addicting, there's history, there's like inspirational stories in it about not giving up. Like it makes you cry, kinda. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I cried a couple times watching the show.
Like the Suzuka
Silent
storyline,
Suzuka.
right? I didn't know they actually. Okay, we're gonna get really depressing here. I didn't know they actually euthanized the horse.
Trigger warning. And this is so Silent Suzuka was a really famous racehorse, broke their leg mid-race. And they had to euthanize the horse. For people who don't know, from my understanding, horses actually need all 4 of their legs to like maintain their blood pressure. And basically, like if it's an irreversible injury, like that horse will be in pain for the rest of its life. Like it literally, the horse is going, if we try to like help it live, it's going to turn around and die eventually soon, and it's just going to be in pain that whole time. So like it sounds like this really sad thing, and it is, but in a lot of cases, from what I've learned following these horses from this game, is that like it is the humane thing when an injury like that happens. And Side Suzuka is a really sad case of like the footage is online of that horse just running and then just limping to the side of the track, and you watch a whole crowd of people just run up to her, all her handlers, her owners, the jockey, trying to figure out what's happening.
It is incredibly sad, and I didn't even know that was like what, because I watched the anime first before I figured out what I put 2 and 2 together of what actually happened like in real life for that.
And
it was even more sad what I learned about that. I was like,
the anime gives them happier endings. The anime and the game gives them happier endings.
Which I'm like, it's kind of a cool thing, right? Where you can give these horses in a way, right, a happier ending. And think how many tons of grass hay did they send to Haru Urara?
It's like they've sent so much hay. One of the horses has like this thing where you can send hay to them online, like this really expensive. And they've sent so much hay that not only have they fed that horse, they've been able to feed all the horses that stay at that stable for like a couple weeks kind of thing. And it's where they're not having to spend money on that. They're able to take that money and spend it on other upkeep for the stable and give these horses like an even more wonderful life than they already have, because they're these famous racing horses. Like it's been a really interesting thing to see the community like so very quickly learn about these horses through this game, and like something that Japan's been up to for years turn around and go, oh, we're gonna support them. And
there was even a post on the I don't know if you saw on the game where it's like information about stables and stuff like that.
So that was, yeah, they had to put out a post about stable etiquette because people were going to visit the horses and not following stable etiquette because
Right.
they were so excited. And horses are sensitive creatures, man. They're sensitive creatures. Any change in their environment, they recognize pretty quickly. But yeah, so it's been a really awesome experience going through Uma Musume and being able to talk to friends about it. I have several friends who are playing it. I actually started a club in the game. I don't know if you're in a club already, but if you want to join my club,
I'll leave mine. You can set it my way. I'll leave mine.
but that's kind of the thing about these live service games. I think the reason people care about them is because they are good. Like they're not necessarily inherently bad games. I think there's a lot of people who go, oh, I won't touch them because it's not a complete game or there's something being held back on them. And I'm like, a lot of times these are really well developed games. I mean, I think of other ones I've played. I'm a day one player of Genshin Impact. And I know there's problems people have with that game, but like I enjoy my time with it. And I mean, another game we've both played years, talking about getting back into FF14 right now. That is a live service game that will someday shut down, that we've both put years into. And it's a fantastic game, and it will be a sad day when those servers shut down. But that's the fate of all live service games, is that they shut down eventually. How, I have thoughts in my head, but like, how do you reconcile that idea of spending money on something that you know is going to shut down, or even putting your time into something that you feel is not permanent?
So this is an interesting thought, right? Let's talk about FF14 because we both have experience in that kind of in that realm, and then I can even talk about Genshin because I have played Genshin for a while, did spend money on that. Before going on the FF14 point, right? There has been strides though to make it single player friendly, right? So with the trust system, um, there have been, you know, commitments from the team where it's like we are making this a easier game to play single player if you so desire, right?
Yeah.
I think there is kind of a walk back on that according to the like a little bit from fan reaction and from the last couple live letters and what they kind of wanted. They're like, oh, maybe we put too much pressure on trying to make this too single player, kind of ruin the experience, right? But that's a discussion for another time. But there has been strides on that, and God forbid, whenever FF14 does kind of shut down their servers, FF11 hasn't yet, which, it's been how many years since FF11 has been?
FF11's hit, I want to say 20 years. I think they've had 20 years. And so, these games will shut down eventually. Doesn't necessarily mean it's soon.
Right. And it's for these type of games, at least MMOs in general, right? It's a very slow death. For at least I think Final Fantasy 14 will have a very slow death where I think they will eventually stop getting updates. They'll stop getting expansions. And it'll just kind of fade away. And I think that is fine, but the way that they're trying to preserve it, I think that's the point I'm trying to get at right here, right?
Yeah.
Is that it is a magnificent, fantastic, like crafted story game just in general.
So would you
want that to be preserved.
Would you say that like you're willing to invest time into it because you have this hope that it'll keep going and that it will be preserved in some way?
Right.
Like, is that in the back of your head, or I guess my question is, like, in my mind, I see the writing on the wall that these things are not permanent. I'm still willing to invest my time into them because in my brain, if I'm putting any money or time into it, I want that experience, even if it's temporary. I think about going to see a movie in the theater,
Right.
I spend that movie in the theater not thinking, oh, I'm taking a copy of the movie home with me and I now own the rights to rewatch this anytime I want, forever and always. That's and so a lot of time when I hop onto one of these things that's temporary, I say to myself, you know, even if I don't stick around the game till its conclusion, like, I'm willing to have this experience and be part of this moment. And if I enjoy the game, I'm willing to spend some money on it to support the developers. We talk about like funding of games, and we'll get into more of that later, but like, a lot of these games shut down when they're no longer financially viable. But yeah, I think, you know, if everybody were to spend like even just the $5 monthly pass on these games, they continue to be like financially viable for a company. And you know, if you look at the $5 monthly pass over 12 months, that's a $60 game.
Right.
That you've been playing all year, if you are keeping up with it, kind of thing. So I don't think people have to spend a ton of money. But I think like you should be willing to support the experience if you're enjoying it. And like, you just kind of have to go into it with the idea that like, no, I'm here to have an experience and be part of the moment, even if it's not permanent. The same way you would with any other experience you pay for when you go on a vacation or you go to a theme park or things like that.
Right.
But that's how I reconcile it in my head. Still sucks.
And just to add on to that, you know, no, for sure, it still sucks. And just to add on to this point, right? This is I think in the same vein, this is the very similar kind of discussion of digital versus physical, right? Because in a digital world, you know, what's stopping someone? Like, I think there is forgot what it was. Was it a book, or was it something on Amazon or Steam got pulled, or some platform got pulled, and it was just gone forever. That's basically it, right? So like the people that bought the game or bought a book or whatever this was, I just can't remember at the top of my head. It's just gone, right? You can't find it, and this is a problem. I think it was a book. This was a Kindle problem, right? So when you buy a book on Kindle, and it just disappears from the Amazon Kindle store, you're like, well, I bought that book for $8. Do I not own that? Right?
Yeah.
And the same can be said about games, and I think that has happened once or twice before.
Yes, it's a very similar thing. The idea that we don't own what we're spending money into, and I think there's probably a lot of people who didn't realize that the first time they got into a live service game. And maybe spent money, and then the game shut down and they got burned. And that's, you know, that's a crappy thing to have happen. I definitely have live service games that I know I spent money and I spent time on that are no longer around that I loved. The biggest one that always pops into my mind, and I know there's going to be someone who listens to this podcast that knows what I'm talking about, Near Reincarnation. It shut down. And the thing about Near Reincarnation that people who didn't play it don't understand is that it wasn't a spin-off. It was Nier 3. Like it was a sequel to Nier Automata. It answered questions, it filled in lore, and those are the canon answers. That is what happened. And Nier Reincarnation specifically came out of Japan. A lot of these big gachas or mobile or live service games come out of there. And I think something that maybe a lot of people don't know is that Japan in particularly takes these games very seriously. They do not see them as side projects or small like spin-off games. Like they take the medium of mobile gaming very seriously, and they use it to tell stories, and they use it to make official entries into their franchises. And there's a concept in Japanese culture of like the beauty of something being temporary and something being fleeting. And like they actually get jazzed over there about the idea of making this temporary experience and making this thing that like you had to be there. You had to be part of it when it happened. And so like when you finish Reincarnation with the way that story ends, you actually know, oh, from inception, this game was made to be shut down. Like, this game had a story it wanted to tell over 3 years, and then it shut itself down when it was done. And that is like written into the story. Like, there's a whole conversation between characters about you disconnecting from the server. Because you being connected to it is like what let the evil things get in. And it was like written in, and it was this beautiful thing. And it's a very near thing. It's a very Yoko Taro thing. But like another game I really loved, it didn't even last a full year, was Final Fantasy the First Soldier. It was a Final Fantasy VII Fortnite game, basically, that was really well crafted. I think it would have done better had it been on consoles and PC, truthfully. It was a mobile only. And like with that kind of gameplay, it struggled. But like I had a blast playing that game for like 3 months. I streamed it a couple times. I made new friends that I still talk to because of that game. That's part of like the experience you get with these online things, is you meet people through them. And it's a bummer that both those got shut down, and like I do wish they were preserved better. But we were talking earlier, you have some examples of games that shut down.
Yeah, so one of the most notable ones, we're just talking about side games, right? One of the first games I played by them, I might have been their first game. I'm not really sure, but Dragalia Lost. I don't think you played it, but you've heard of it, right?
That was side games?
That was side games.
I did not realize that.
And not only that, it was also published by Nintendo. So that was even like kind of a double whammy. I was like, wow, that game just shut down. So I remember, I played it for a little bit and then I kind of fell off of it, but it was very endearing. It was very cute. But then, fast forward a couple years, I hear it's like, oh yeah, live service is going down. So it's like, you start to think for the people that spend a lot of money on these games, on that game in particular, and you're like, that must be a hard pill to swallow, right? So let me ask you this, as a Genshin player, right? And you spent money on that game, right?
So, and I've been playing it for nearly 5 years now. And I started my content creation with it. So I was a bit of a different case because I was spending money that like people were also subbing to my channel, expecting me to do certain things. I have probably over the 5 years probably spent something to the tune of $1,000. I would not be surprised if I've spent over $1,000 on that game. And I would say like 800 of that was the first year. Because of content creation and stuff like that. And I often think about that, that like I spent so much money on this game, but also it's like, I cannot overstate the value that being on Twitch brought to me. Not even necessarily financial, but like the friends I have from it. I have people that I talk to every day that I met because of that game, that are like good, close friends. And so it's a weird thing. But at the same time, like I try not to like do the arithmetic of, well, how many hours have I played versus how many dollars that I've spent. But I do know that game will eventually shut down. There is part of me that wonders, because the company that made it, Hoyoverse, MiHoYo, whatever you want to call them, they've pretty much done exclusively live service gacha games. And I think they've sunsetted 1 or 2 of them that were like their earliest games, but like their main games, Honkai Impact 3rd, Genshin, Honkai Star Rail, we don't really have precedent from them for what they do when they finish. Honkai Impact 3rd finished its story and they just said, cool, we're starting another arc. Another 10-year. Similar to like 14 when Endwalker happened, and it was like, well, are we done? And they said, no, we got 3 more expansions that we're gonna fire off. Like, so, I think it'll be interesting to see where companies that have built themselves only on live service, where they'll be. but I think I did go into it knowing that, like, well, they say they have a 5-year plan for this. I'll enjoy it for at least 5 years. And then they turned that into a 10-year plan. But we're coming up on the 5-year anniversary, and I don't resent my time. I don't resent my time or my money that I've spent on it,
Right.
because I've had this beautiful experience with that game. I just went to Germany to visit
Mhm.
friends that I made through that game, and had a lovely week over there. You know, we talked about that
Right.
last podcast. And I'm going to Japan with one of them in like a month and a half. Like,
Mhm.
uh, it's weird. It's weird. Um, but yeah, like, as someone who's spent that much money on one of these games, I don't know. It's weird to put a price tag on what it's given me. Uh,
Right. But you enjoyed the experience. That's the part that matters, right? You
and
so,
that's what I would say. That's
mhm.
what I would say. Even if it was temporary. Um, but I we talk about like spending money on these games, and uh like how much money I've spent on one because of the way they're monetized and things like that. Uh and I think it begs the question of why do these kind of games exist? And I think it comes down to how games are funded in the industry these days.
Right.
Um, I think a lot of people think a company makes a game, they sell a few million copies, and they take the money they made from that game to make their next game. Uh, but that's not actually how a lot of the industry functions. A lot of the time, the industry functions in a way that they go to someone, they pitch the game, that publisher gives them money to make it, and then that publisher eats up all the profits from the game after it's been sold, and the publisher turns around and funds the next game if they want to.
Mhm.
And the magic of a live service game, for a game company at least, is if it does well, it's kind of this steady source of income to keep operations running so that things don't have to get shut down.
Right.
Um,
It's the joke that Square Enix is still alive because of 14, right? The
yep,
steady income, right? Mhm.
yep, and like, you can look at their financial records, and it's not even necessarily a joke. Like, Square
Yeah.
Enix
Mhm.
has stayed afloat during certain years because of the money that the MMO division brings in. Um, but in this world of like the way games are financed and stuff, like, live service games have kind of developed as a survival tactic almost. Um, and it begs the question of like, what is the more viable practice between like live service and traditional games? And unfortunately, we see with a lot of traditional game studios, with the cost of development of games these days, that they don't survive necessarily. We talked
Right.
about a lot of live service games shutting down. But the other topic we wanted to talk about today was Xbox. And they just had a
Right.
huge recent sweep of layoffs. And it's literally from what we're talking about right now. They cut funding to games, because those studios were relying on funding from Xbox to make their next game. They didn't get to keep funding from the game they sold previously.
Mhm.
But you had more information on these layoffs, kind of the games that have been affected.
Right. And just to kind of list a few, because I'm not gonna there's so much to kind of go through there. It's kind of depressing, so I'm not gonna go too in depth about it. But some of the games that I was kind of interested in or just kind of was fascinated about was Perfect Dark is a good example. The studio heading that game has since been canceled. ZeniMax, so new MMORPG, so the people that kind of headed up the Elder Scrolls, that kind of ESO, I'm pretty sure. Um, that's been canceled. There's a lot of layoffs within the Call of Duty and Forza developers. I think the the Call of Duty is split up into, or was split up into three studios. I think they folded, or it might be more than three studios now. They folded one of them, right? And then Blizzard, Activision, and the King kind of division of Xbox, which is very weird to say, but they made these investments in these studios, like spent I don't remember the number. How much do you remember
Billions.
off the top of your? It was billions
It was
that they spent on
billions.
Activisions. Um, and the one that surprised me the most was actually King, because they are the most famous for the most popular mobile game of all time, which is Candy Crush, right?
Oh, is that who King is?
Yes.
Man.
So I was surprised about that, because that we'll be surprised about all those Facebook moms bringing bringing in that money for Candy Crush. Like,
Yeah.
not even a joke. So there was a lot of these investments in these studios that were made over the culmination of after about 5 years, right? And they just couldn't sustain themselves anymore, right? You had all these people that, all these studios that were making games. It was, I remember thinking to myself too, when you would see the docket like a couple years ago of all the Xbox studios that they had under their umbrella. You're like, man, Xbox has a lot of stuff under their belt. And that's really to their advantage, right? Because ever since the 360, right, they just been on the decline. Let's just be real. They've been on the decline. They haven't been. They couldn't compete, right? Um.
Yeah, and there
So
was
they
this
had a lot of,
idea that Xbox was back in the last couple
yeah,
years, that like they made the investment. We're going to see all these big games come from them.
right. And there was a lot of hype behind that, and originally, I played the 360 during my heyday. I wasn't a PS3 owner, but Xbox 360, I spent like almost a decade on that, right? Playing Halo, playing, Call of Duty and all that kind of stuff. Even played FF13 on the Xbox 360, right? Came in 3 discs, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it was cool. And you never want to see all these developers or these studios get shut down, because it's, these are people's livelihood, right? So that it sucks. Um, but man, I don't know. It was a kind of a gung ho kind of thing where they just kind of said, "Here's everything," but now it seems like maybe should they have done that, right?
Yeah.
Um, so and we're talking about just the future of Xbox, and the one of the founding team members, Laura Fryer, her name is, was recently reading an article about this where we were talking about the ROG Ally, the Xbox edition, last podcast.
Yeah.
Um, and she was talking about the same exact thing in this interview, and she was asked how what she thinks about it, and she really thinks, she's like, I'm not really sure what the future is going to go for with Xbox. There's a quote here. There's literally no reason to buy this handheld. First off, that's what she says, right? Which is very strong. That's a very strong statement, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, as one of the founding members of the Xbox team, I'm not pleased with where things are today. I don't love watching all the value that I helped create slowly get eroded away.
Now,
I'm
this
sad
is
because from
someone
my
who is
perspective,
no longer with Xbox.
no longer. Yes, correct. They're
I did
um
just want to clarify that. But
yes,
yeah,
yes, no longer.
it is an interesting thing that like it's not just on the software side we're seeing Xbox pull back, but
Mhm.
they're saying that like from a hardware perspective, Xbox seems
Right.
like it's kind of shifting strategies.
Yeah. And, to kind of add on to the quote, she goes on to say, it looks like Xbox has no desire or literally can't ship hardware anymore. So this partnership is about as slow as an exit from the hardware business completely. Personally, I think Xbox hardware is dead. And
Man, that's
and
a statement.
I and I agree with them, because I kind of saw the writing on the wall years back. The reason for that, because of Xbox Game Pass, right? And with their kind of they're integrating themselves more with PC, and Microsoft has also said, it's like we will put um Minecraft is a good example. We are never going to take Minecraft off of these other consoles because it just brings us so much more revenue,
Yeah.
right? It's never going to be exclusive. Um, and there's been rumors about the Master Chief Collection going on the Nintendo Switch too. So it's become more and more of these things where it's like you're not. I don't think you care about hardware anymore. You're just the publisher now,
Yeah.
right? Um, and that begs the question: what's the long term plan? And I think that is the long term plan. And I think, and I'm gonna say this right now. I think that's the long term plan for maybe Sony too. Not like within the next 10 years, but like you see Sony, who's now this is we're talking about Xbox, who's an American company, but the Japanese companies they are very very defensive about this stays here, right?
Yeah.
Um, but you've been seeing all these first party or these PlayStation exclusives. They've been coming to PC. Stellar Blade, Spider Man, God of War, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and there was a former PlayStation executive who talked about that, and he said the thing about porting a PlayStation game to PC is it's basically printing money. He said,
yeah,
the game's made, it's got legs on it, and they're like, as long as they can keep the cost down on adjusting that port, you're basically printing money on a game that's already made money by putting it somewhere else.
right. And the financials of that too. You just kind of take a quick gander of that. They sell a lot, and this has been an existing thing for a while, where they sell consoles at a loss, effectively.
Yep.
Right. So if they can go around and I think Xbox has a good example of this. Xbox Game Pass. They have a cloud feature. They have a cloud service. Um, so I think that's kind of where they're going for, where it no longer makes financial sense for them to do that when they could just either one host it on all these platforms. PC, is a good example of all these miniature like handheld PCs. You can just kind of like very console like people will buy them. Go to Steam, go to these different stores, and you can just download it there, right? Um, it's becoming a very homogenized process if I'm using that word
Yeah.
correctly, right? Um, now Nintendo's very stuck in their ways. I never seen Nintendo ever doing that ever in my lifetime,
Yeah.
at least, right? Um, but what's your thoughts on that?
Well, so I don't think it's entirely impossible that Xbox disappears as a console maker, um, because they would not be the first to exit the console race. And I think people even have in their heads that they might be the biggest person to exit the console race ever, but I don't think that's true. I think who you look at comparatively is Sega.
Mhm.
I grew up with Sega consoles. I had a Sega Genesis. Um, I had a sister-in-law who had a Sega Dreamcast and a Sega Saturn. Uh, and Sega was, before Xbox, was the third big console. It was Sega, Sony, and Nintendo were kind of the big three for a long time. And then Sega exited making consoles and became a publisher. I kind of go to Nintendo for Sega titles now, where if I want to play Sonic, my brain gravitates to Nintendo, even though that's not necessarily true. Like I can get
Mhm.
Sega games on my PlayStation, my brain uh goes to Nintendo for it. And I think if Xbox were to disappear and become a publisher, you brought up like the handheld PCs. I think that's probably like a big piece of the future for Xbox is these third parties taking their games and optimizing them for, like, what is it called, Steam Deck certified, when a
Yeah.
game has been optimized specifically for it, or taking something and optimizing it for these ROG allies. Like, I think I could see a world where Xbox says, oh, there is not another Xbox coming out, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they've said anything to the effect of another Xbox coming out.
They
Where
have
Sony
they've
has specifically said they're working on the PS6.
Yeah, they have mentioned that. There's been quotes, I believe, where they're like, yeah. just wait. They're actually announced a partnership with AMD to power their
Oh,
next generation
interesting.
of Xboxes. So, which is very surprising to me. Which kind of begs the question of why, right? When someone there must see some value in these consoles, and thinking about this
Phil
now.
Spencer. Phil Spencer
No,
and
yeah,
wanting to keep his job.
yeah, no. I honestly, there's also rumors that Phil Spencer's gone after this console launch.
You think?
Like, yeah,
Man, that would be interesting.
I think that
Um,
they've been trying to. I forgot her name. She's kind of like the next person up. I think that's what they're trying to push her towards. Um. So, but in Microsoft's case, they have, if we are counting PCs, right? And this is Microsoft, they probably have the biggest, in terms of shares of just their system alone, just because of Windows, if you think about it.
yeah, if you talk about like all PCs, like not just gaming PCs, like not just gamers on PCs, but if you think like Windows as an operating system and being able to like, if they got it in like full cloud based playing and being like, oh,
Mhm.
any Windows device can play Xbox games, like that is a big chunk of people. Um, and if anyone has the
Yeah,
infrastructure to pull off cloud, it's
it's
Microsoft.
Microsoft,
You know,
right?
a lot of people have tried. Google tried for a long time with Stadia, and didn't necessarily pull it off. But I think Microsoft maybe is one of the few that could figure it out. Um, but with these developments, at Microsoft, the layoffs, the possibility of them exiting the console sphere in the way that Sega did, you know, I go back to what we were talking about at the beginning of all this. Stop killing games.
Mhm.
And the idea is any of this really permanent? You know, I think we talk about live service games and not wanting them to die, and them being this temporary thing, but like, you know, I think it's really cool that for my PS2 I was able to buy this Retro Fighters controller. This is a
Mhm.
third party. This is arguably the best PS2 controller you can buy now. Because when I got my PS2 out of storage to start playing games again on it this year, both my controllers didn't work. The silicone in them had just died.
Mhm.
Um, and we think about owning a physical game as forever, but these discs have a shelf life. Even in like a good environment, in the right temperature, protected, like they do eventually just deteriorate.
Right.
Um, and I think a big piece of like the stop killing games movement that is the piece that I agree with in all of this, like thinking about like Microsoft leaving the space, thinking about live service games going away, is preservation. Um, I think preservation of games, whether it be because they're fun, whether it be because they're an art form, whether it be because someday if I have kids, I want to be able to share these experiences that I had with them. I think
Mhm.
game preservation is important. I think that for me is like my wrapped up in a little bow thought is that I think game
Mhm.
preservation is important. I hope whatever comes of stop killing games um, can be an answer to like what's happening at Xbox right now, and saying,
Right.
oh, even if the Xbox ceases to exist, that there is some way to play the generations of games that came out on Xbox, because that's one thing that's awesome about Xbox right now is you can go on Xbox's online store and buy games from the original Xbox.
Mhm.
Like you talked about playing Final Fantasy 13 on the 360. One of the easiest ways to access 13 right now in a good playable form is to get an Xbox and download it off the Xbox store. You can't download it
Right.
on PlayStation. The Steam versions have issues. Uh, Xbox has done a surprisingly good job of preserving their older games on their online store. And it would suck if their consoles disappeared and their online store disappeared with it, unless that moved to a cloud or something. But I would love to see something that happens with the Stop Killing Games movement be the thing that says, hey, we're going to preserve all this.
Right. And it's going to, there's eventually going to be all this. I foresee there's going to be a lot of stuff added onto terms of service. Not that anybody reads it, but adding on to, like, let's say your favorite game ends, basically end of life, basically, right? You are going to I foresee there being a disclaimer that, hey, you are going in at your own risk now, right? If you want to, if you preserve these games, we're going to provide you all the tools with this, but this is all you, right?
Yep.
Because there is a legal aspect of, was like, okay, who is something, because playing on a, this is just sparked my security kind of mindset, right? It's like, so if something does happen, right, security wise, not saying that there would be, but it's very possible, right? Who's responsible for that?
On a
right?
private server for like
On a private
FF11,
server.
everyone's data
Yeah,
gets
exactly.
leaked.
Yeah.
Is Square Enix on the hook for that, for allowing a private server? Is the host of the private server? And yeah, there's things that's got to happen to make that kind of preservation possible. And I think starting the conversation that Stop Killing Games is starting is a good step. It's a good step. I don't know where the conversation ends. But something I've said for a long time is, rather than saying, hey, there's so many problems with digital, this is why you have to buy physical, I've often said, why don't we just try to address the problems with digital ownership? Why don't we just try to address those problems? And that's what Stop Killing Games is trying to do. And I think with like what's going on with Xbox and those kind of things, I think we are at a time in the world of gaming where it's a conversation that needs to happen. If we hope to have preservation, where more and more games that we love are getting shut down, more and more games that are being made are live service that will eventually shut down. I think it's an important conversation at the current juncture in time. And it'll be interesting to see where we are 5 years from now. We'll look back at the podcast and say, hey, these were our thoughts. Turned out entirely differently than we thought, or maybe nothing's changed.
Right. And just to kind of put a bow on this for me, this movement is clearly a symptom of a bigger problem, in my opinion. It's like you mentioned, it's the transition to digital only products, right? How do we handle this? How do we handle what do you own and what do you not own? That's basically it's not just, this problem isn't just about games too. This is a symptom of a bigger problem with just any form of media that you can think of that has been digitized. So
yeah, I agree. But that's been kind of our thoughts on this. That's episode 4. Let us know down in the comments, was there a live service game that you loved that got shut down? Is there one that you're playing right now that, like, you listened to this podcast and went, oh, this is gonna shut down someday, and we just ruined your fun time with it? Or was there a game that was announced that got canceled that you were really bummed about? Let us know. But thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. I hope you have a wonderful week in gaming, and we'll see you next time.
thanks, everyone.